Hi, this is Mary Ball, co-founder of Women in Business Book Club.
And this is Lucy Hillier, co-founder of the Women in Business Book Club.
Oh,
You're listening to the SaasHoles.
Welcome to SaasHoles, a show dedicated to issues within the software as a service industry. We are revenue ops with a edge. Jamie, Jason, KG, and myself, Pete, have a combined 100 years of making interesting decisions. Please subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Today, our guests are Mary Ball and Lucy Hillier, co-founders of the Women in Business Book Club, which is a diverse network of women who inspire one another through shared knowledge and experiences. But before we get to Mary and Lucy, we have a sponsor for the show, NeuroNoodle. Hey, parents of athletes, get a doodle your noodle, a brain map before the season starts, so you have a baseline to compare it to. You get a physical every year, right? Well, get a brain checkup now. Schedule an appointment at neuronoodle.com. KG?
I wish Jamie was here. Yes, Pete.
KG?
Yes, Pete.
Never buy Velcro on Amazon. It's a total ripoff. Leave us some comments on our blog at SaasHoles.net. Got any shout outs, KG?
I have some shout outs, of course. I want to congratulate Dave Tuttle, formerly of ZipRecruiter, for starting as a new position as Chief Revenue Officer at Origin. Congratulations, Mr. Tuttle. Also want to congratulate Sean Denumbrum. Say that 3 times fast. Denumbrum for starting.
It's like after my bad jokes.
I know, exactly. Denumbrum. Yeah, exactly. For starting as a new position as a reporting analyst at Sendoso. And congratulations for Abe Davis, formerly of ZipRecruiter, for starting a new position as an account executive growth business at Salesforce, salesforce.com. They're still hiring and growing, Pete. So there you go.
I can't believe that.
I know, they hire.
Hey, our boys over at Pop Menu, Brendan Sweeney and Tony Roy, they're looking for an inside sales leader in Atlanta, guys. Reach out if interested. We'll put the link in the podcast notes. I would say that's the job of the show. Congrats, Tommy Callahan at Callahan Auto Parts. He closed the deal for 500,000 brake pads. Congrats, Tommy. Now, KG, what is the relationship between you and Mary here? How did we get them on the show?
Well, Mary is just one of my favorite individuals of all time. She started at ZipRecruiter. How long ago, Mary? At Zip?
5 years in March.
5 years ago, and she came over from she's in our UK is in our UK office, and I just remember meeting her for the first time, and just high energy, super coachable, and always willing to learn, and Pete, you may remember like people that started at your company previously, and they come meet you, they say they want to learn, and then they just sort of like go off into nothingness, and they don't take any of your advice. And Mary was always so great about, like, she'd take my time, she'd come out and meet, and then and we'd have calls, and then she would put stuff in place, and that's just the definition of coachability. And I can work with a person like that all day long. And Mary accelerated in her career at Zip from being an individual contributor, and then now she's leading the entire UK office of ZipRecruiter, and I'm just so proud of what she's doing. So wow. She's one of my favorites, Pete.
What was the office already open out there, Mary? Did you help open that up?
No, not really. KG, you made me so emotional with that intro. So the office was started in the back end of 2017, and they had a couple of the sales guys. We had the original guy who started the UK business, and then it just progressed, and now it's turned into the wonderful beast that we know it.
But there was like 2-3 people in the office.
Yeah, so I was number 3. They had 2 guys doing BD, and then they originally brought me on to start building out the account management departments and process and all that good stuff.
Do they still just use recruiters out there in England? Recruitment shops?
No, I think they're a lot more diverse now, thankfully.
Yeah. Okay.
I got into this industry working with Indeed, so I've only ever known programmatic. So to me, I mean, I remember I was in Indeed, God. Oh, there we go, KG.
I think we had a glitch in the show. I'm putting a ticket in now to Zoom.
Yes, please. Don't mind me.
But yeah, when I first got into the industry, like that's all people were doing, were buying slots. It was a very much a post and pray environment, whereas things have obviously developed massively since, thank goodness.
Then how did Lucy come into play?
Great question.
I don't even know how we met.
Through mutual friends, but Lucy,
Yeah.
so Lou and I have a shared circle of friends. And I think probably in maybe 2019, we started spending more time together. We realized that we completely geeked out on the same things. So if we read a book that we really enjoyed, we'd share it. If one of us was doing a course, we'd share all the course material with the other person. And we just started speaking. Yeah, we started speaking more regularly. And Lou Lou tells a great origin story for the two of us. But she was like, we used to just be at parties and the two of us would just be nerding out in the corner talking about like what had gone on, what we had learned, what sort of book we had, like, it really got
complete losers.
Pretty ridiculous.
Complete losers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
With the wallflowers. That's why we both wear blonde, just in the hope that there would be something non-geeky about us.
Well, how about we back up and like, each of you give us your, 30-second background. I'd love to hear about each of you. Lucy, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you both so much for having us on the show. Love your podcasts. I do love listening to this. So where to start? I have kind of lived and worked in the US, South Africa, London, and I've recently moved back to my hometown, which is a little country bumpkin place in sort of the north of England. And so I began working when I was about 16. I decided I didn't want to do uni, didn't want to carry on academically. As much as I do geek out, I was so ready to just get out there. My family were very much like that, so I kind of grown in that way and just thought I'm ready. So I joined a tech startup as a sales advisor, and I was really lucky. It was being a startup environment, you have so much autonomy to make the role your own. And alongside the CEO, I spearheaded the opening of the US office. We were selling enterprise text messaging for Verizon. And this was kind of when that was all very new. No one kind of thought that was ever going to go anywhere. And so that was, the start of it really. And then my career took a bit of a turn, and I actually ended up as a production manager in television for 8 or 9 years, which I loved, but was dying to get back into the corporate tech life, and I just missed that kind of buzz and innovation. So like Mary, I now work in recruitment technology, and I head up client adoption for the UK business.
And Mary?
Yeah, so in case you were confused, there is an accent. I'm not British or American. I am South African born and bred. I was raised in a pretty pokey town back in South Africa and got pretty bored of that. Similar to Lucy, had no desire to go to university, was never very academically strong, hadn't really learned much about myself, so I had no idea what I wanted to do, what I wanted to study. So committing 3 years to something I'd probably never do again seemed completely useless. So I moved to the UK, worked in many jobs, from being an assistant manager at Blockbuster, which is a great town, to telesales, to eventually moving more seriously into account management, customer relations, sales. Yeah, I just started to really find my footing with tech, and especially startups, because again, as Lou mentioned, it's that sort of that autonomy that you're allowed to get into the weeds, you're allowed to pan out, it's scrappy, it's a very different environment to getting into a highly corporate environment where everything's a lot more rigid, it's more siloed. You can't really move around as much. So yeah, so as KG already gave me one of the best introductions, Pete, you need to give me a recording of that anyway.
Oh, you'll get it.
There's going to be her voicemail on her phone now.
It really it's going to be on my out of office. It's going to be my voicemail. But yeah, so joined Zip in 2017 and now lead the UK operation. And yeah, I love it.
Now you're both in sales leadership. Why don't you guys just stay in sales and make money? Why deal with all the headaches?
You need to find a job that you can do both. Which
yeah.
Autonomy, Pete. It's about autonomy.
One at a time. Tell us why you got into leadership. We have a lot of female salespeople and sales managers that listen to the show and they want to move up, tell us your story. Maybe we can inspire them to do the same.
Yeah, Lou, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I started as a sales advisor. So it was kind of, we all know the score. You're kind of very box ticking exercise to start with. You're trying to, learn the ropes. And I loved it. I thrive on, the buzz of sales. Quickly, worked my way through a book of accounts and really found I was harnessing like client relationships. I loved that when you're just kind of kicking back with someone, finding out what they need, what makes them tick, how can I help you, how can we make money together? That's kind of the excitement for me. And I think the more that I did, the hungrier I became. So you're quite right. You want to stay where the money is, and you want to stay in sales and just keep that ticking in. But the more you do it, I think your drive just gets bigger and bigger, and you end up just wanting more. And I had such great leaders. I mean, Mary has spoke so highly of you, KG, and I had a mentor very similar to yourself I've worked with for so long, and we're still great friends now. We go out for dinner and still, shoot the breeze and talk about what we're doing. And I kind of wanted to become that because I felt so strongly about everything that I'd learned from him that you got to pass it on. So I just wanted to keep growing and just see, take it to the next level and pass on everything I'd learned, really. So that's why I ended up moving more into leadership, I guess.
Yeah, I had a bit of a weird relationship with sales because like I say, I've always been a very, very much a people person, and loved relationships, loved forging those relationships, loved working with clients who had like tenure with the business. And I was at a company, I don't know, a while ago, maybe 8 years ago, and I was heading up the account management team. And my then senior director said, "We want you to take on the sales team as well." Which scared the bejesus out of me because in my mind, they were two completely different things. And I know, KG, you and I have even had this conversation as recently as sort of 3-4 years ago when things were changing at Zip and there was a lot of restructure. And I think initially there was such a sort of trigger around the word sales that, in my mind, it's still a bit of a bloke sport. It's a man's game. It's all, rough and tumble. And then as I started getting more experience within the sales remit and I started working with more polished leaders, I started to realize that there was a lot of finesse required within managing clients. And in whether you're sales or account management, essentially you should be doing the same thing. It's just the difference is going to be the client's tenure. So that's kind of how I got into it.
So interesting.
So
a couple of comments, actually. I'm noticing your own self-talk. You were sort of convincing yourself that sales, like new business sales, is like it's a bloke's game, it's a man's game. That was your own self-talk that was getting in your way, which was interesting. But I would also say that there, and Pete, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. Lucy and Mary, you both are talking about, like leadership as like a vocation. It's like a calling. It's like something you feel inside, like you have to, like Lucy, you're talking about sort of giving back and paying it forward in a way. Pete, do you feel like leadership was a calling and a vocation for you? I mean, you could have just stayed on the phones, right? But leadership a vocation for you, Pete?
Do you like to teach? It's like, why do people be teachers? It's not the most highest paying profession, but if you like to teach and you can mix it in with getting money, I think sales leadership is a great thing. Now, depending on which level that you're in, I mean, if you're getting on the entry level side, that could be a bit of a headache. Some people love it. Some people like to have clay that's not been marred. Some people want to have, experienced people, but either way, teaching. So I think sales leadership accomplishes both is my 2 cents.
It's funny you say that because my granddad used to say to me, I think you should be a teacher, because I loved reading books and I loved talking and hearing the sound of my own voice. And I said, no. I was like, absolutely not. I want to make more money than that. So It's exactly what you're saying. It just kind of marries the two together.
We had Lauren Bailey on the show a month or so ago, and she was, awesome. And we talked about women in leadership. Why don't more amazing women like you two get into leadership? What is the deal?
This is probably pretty controversial to say, but The one thing that really annoyed me is that when apart from one amazing mentor who I found, which was obviously Veronica Kutz, who is incredible, KG, you know her really well as well, I really struggled to find female mentors in the sales space. And it's still now something that I'm really searching for. A lot of the women who I've met, I'm now starting to get into more open circles where there's a lot more knowledge sharing, but there's still definitely a feeling of either intimidation or scarcity with the people I've encountered previously, which really pisses me off because that needs to be tackled head on, right? Like, and Lou and I will get into that because that was kind of one of the core bowstrings to the Women in Business book club. Yeah, but I think like women traditionally have always been kind of gently ushered towards the nurturing roles, right? Like HR, admin, all of that good stuff. And I think salespeople are generally seen as being loud and mouthy and bullish and, you know, and those are all great qualities. But I think if you've not naturally in that sort of stream of quality or personality, it's going to feel very, very foreign to you. And I don't think a lot of women embrace that, where there's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of empowerment when you actually do embrace that and you stop being scared to ask for things. That's when it's a real game changer. So I do think things are changing. I think women are starting to claim space. I think women are starting to be more vocal. I think that there are a lot of men advocating for women in leadership now, which is a huge, huge help. There's the strongest sort of lesson in that. And this is something that I'm really, really strong with my team and with the people we work with in the book club is like, fuck perfect. Women need to stop thinking they need to be perfect and they need to just try. Like, you don't need a filter on your life. Just do it. Don't worry about being perfect. It's more important to be brave. That's where you need to focus yourself.
Lauren Bailey said nearly the exact same thing.
I think
I'll tell you, we do this one thing in Girls Club. It's called Rise Up on Record. We get a bunch of our thought leaders to do it. I do one every month, and it's a confessional. So yes, some of them have done it at like 3 o'clock in the morning in my bathroom, but it's the 3 F's, right? And we ask women to record a fear, a failure, or a fuck up. And it's so refreshing. She's like, oh, fuck this up. Oh, fuck this. I save them up now. And I like celebrate them in these confessionals. And it's everybody's favorite thing. They binge them over and over and over and over and over again. Because to watch women that you thought were perfect, whether it was because of LinkedIn or Facebook or the fabulous suit, or, I mean, how many women role models do we have? Most of them have hair and makeup budgets on TV, right? And they're a size 2 and they're a bitch. And that's not real. So getting real women to come in and share the 3 F's has been people's favorite thing. And what we're trying to do is quash that perfectionism.
F's. Do you get any criticism? Like, do you get any like females that are trying to like, you know, break the glass ceiling and all this kind of stuff and go, no, now that takes them back because now they're showing this unprofessional side, you know, 3 a.m, you know, like, anybody give any criticism about that?
No, but some are better at it than others, Kev, right? There's been plenty of women I've asked who are thought leaders for us, who act as role models, who I say, listen, the more vulnerable, the better. Makeup is optional, get real, blah, 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 blah. And the best they can say is like, take care of your health. It's important. And we're like, thanks so much, delete, right? The ones where I've had people do it with their curlers in, I've had people crying. No, it's because it's real.
I think she said the F word more times than you did, by the way, but she said basically fuck perfect. And Pete, you remember this? She referenced a study that the female applicant to a leadership job will only apply if she has 90% of the boxes checked or something like that.
So guys and gals, here's a couple things you can do to get more female applicants, okay? Number 1, take a look at your job description. I know I did this. We still write them like we're in charge here. It's an employee's market, right? So knowing a woman won't apply unless she has everything checked, reduce the number of things. So it's not a wish list. It's a bare minimum requirements list. And if you can't get the people there to really narrow it down, just add a line that says, the perfect candidate may not have all of these. We strongly encourage you to apply. There's job training available. Like, make it a softer landing, right? That's one of the very first things you can do. The second thing is, I found, again, I was guilty of this. right? Sales is a competitive sport. It's a confidence game. And so we write our job descriptions like that. If you're ready to come in and crush it and kill it and win it, and that freaks some women out. We're great at selling. I can cite 200 stats, don't make me, because I don't have them memorized, about how women rise to the top. But very often they're doing that through relationship building and great communication skills and, caring and organization and all those other things. And they are crushing quota, but they don't sign up to crush it. They sign up to care. They sign up to do well. Right? And it's just, it doesn't attract them.
But the male counterpart will be like, I have 2 out of 10. And the male counterpart will apply to those.
No, I couldn't agree more, because I had a bit of a fuck that moment when I was at school. When you're having your meetings, deciding what you should do next and what courses should you take. So in the UK, it's GCSEs at that point. What subjects do you want to do? And I wanted to take business studies. And the career counselor leader woman said, "Oh, I think you should do textiles." I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty stylish. I'll take that. But yeah, it was just unreal. And the entire time was spent trying to convince me not to go into business studies, which I did, got a distinction. It was the highest grade I'd got out of anything. And it was just, I had to take textiles anyway. She made me do it. And I also got the best one. I got an A star, so it was pretty good. I showed them that I could do both. But it was just, the way that it was just programmed to automatically say, no, you don't want to do that. And then, funnily enough, when I was in my first job, so I started, by the time I was VP of sales in the US for the text messaging company, I was turning 20, so young. And I remember being in this boardroom with all guys, just everyone in suits, these are CEOs, I was right up there with them. And one of the guys actually sort of went, no, I'd like Tim, who was our CEO, to answer that. And literally hushed me. And It was brilliant, because my CEO said, sorry, guys, I have absolutely no idea how to answer your question. This lady does.
Wow.
Amazing. It was crazy. So I just think, I couldn't agree more with Mary. I think a lot of it is fear. I think there's a kind of a preconception that in sales, if you're a woman, I remember actually, but the sales manager when I joined was a woman, and she actually said, you need to be careful not to come across as bossy or shrill. And I thought, well, I will be those things if that's what we're going to need to get shit done. So, and it was just, again, she was thinking, we can't come across as that, because as a woman, you won't be looking ballsy and, go-getter. You'll be looking bossy and shrill. I just think it is because of some misconceptions and people just not kind of, coming out of their comfort zone and just going for it.
But it's not people not wanting to hire women, right? It's or it could be. I don't know what it's like over there, but it's females unwilling to apply for the position, because if there's 10 criteria, unless they meet all 10, they're not going to apply. Is that the big issue?
Yeah, I think we stand in our own way. I think we get in our own way sometimes and just don't realize. And it's like Mary says about, making mistakes. If I look back at all the mistakes I've made, they're definitely the points that have massively changed things, changed my career, actually been beneficial. They've made me grow. I've learned new things. But I don't know about you, Mary, but I think we've spoke about it sometimes, and it's definitely us getting, women in general getting in our own way.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, some of the biggest shit shows that I've caused have caused me the biggest growth.
Exactly.
I think you just gotta, I think it all just comes down, you just gotta be bold, just do it. Like, if something scares you, just start, just try. Like, what's the worst that could happen?
Mm-hmm.
I think, like, you just have to get out of your head and just go for it. And like, it's probably not gonna matter in 6 months, 5 years. So just do it. Just go for it.
Yeah, but surrounding yourself with other people that you've seen take that leap, I think, could be incredibly, helpful. I'm going to disagree slightly with the answers to, answer to the question. There is some non-zero percentage of people out there that still will overtly in their mind actively say, I'm not hiring a woman for this job. There is some non-zero percentage there, and that's unfortunate. I'm hoping that continues to go to zero. We could probably spend a whole show talking about unconscious bias, though. There's they'll say that they would want to hire a woman. They're not opposed to hiring a woman for the job, just want the best person for the job. But there's something that happens, in the unconscious that creates those decisions. So I wouldn't put it entirely on the women that are applying to these jobs, and if they're not applying to these jobs, that's definitely a problem. But I think it takes, it definitely takes two to tango, and there's as some would say, the problem is multivariate. But
I mean, look, I've had men interview me and outright ask me if I have plans to have babies in the next 5 years.
Yeah, just awful. I'm
like, wait, are we in the 21st century? What is happening? Yeah, so there's definitely still some bias, but that's not really within our control. Like, we can do things to educate people and all of that good stuff, but again, and we'll kind of touch on this more shortly, but that's why I get the book club is such a passion project for us, because we just want to pull people in, and we've got some pretty cool stories that we'll share with you as well, but just pull people into that shared mentality where it's okay to be brave, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay, that like-minded mentality is really important.
And it is so about who you surround yourself with. There's a saying that you are the sum of the 5 people you're closest to, and I think that's really true. And I always say I think everyone should have a Mary in their life, because she's funny as hell, but the mentorship she's shown me as well, and just being around people that want you to grow and want you to succeed and aren't jealous or aren't wondering, well, hang on, if you get ahead, where does that leave me? It's, I think there's all of that as well. So I think it's massively about who you surround yourself with.
The book club, that's a great way, especially in today's new kids coming through, because they want to have a reason why they're doing everything. And if you can have a shared knowledge source, a book, to say, hey, look, here are the procedures, or here are the processes, here's the way we want to go about things, and here's the book, and you read it chapter by chapter, everybody gets buy-in. That was my reasons for sharing books back in the day. Why did you guys get the book club going together? What is the book club? Is it really only females? I mean, if I want to come in and read a book, you're going to kick me out?
This is so funny, because we had so many discussions about this, didn't we? We were talking about the name, and I'm like, I don't want to exclude, because sometimes if you try to include someone, you'll exclude someone else. But we didn't mean to do that. We were just kind of, we kind of wanted a safe space that, because of women sometimes having fear to open up and say the things that they might not normally say, we wanted to kind of create that place where they didn't worry about feeling stupid or not saying the right thing. And then, we have plans for it to grow from there.
Yeah.
Well, and what is it? And what? What is it? How did it start? And give us everything.
So, I think it was just before lockdown, Luce and I were chatting about, I don't know, some book or some nonsense. And we were saying on that call, we were like, we need to expand this. We need to expand some of the findings that we found valuable from this book or this course. I can't remember what it was, Lou. But
it was a book you were reading, and it was literally on a Sunday morning. And I remember you sent me a message saying this is a book you need to get. And I was like, we really need to start telling people we should make a book club. And you're like, let's do a book club. And it was literally like that. But I can't remember the book now, actually. We should look back and see what it is.
I can't remember our first book, but
it was great.
So we had we got on a call that night, and we had Post-its, and we were sticking stuff all over the place. We were brainstorming about what this means. And then we started thinking what is this book club? What is it going to be? What is it going to be? What sort of cadence are we going to meet? How are we going to execute the meetings? We started just brainstorming the whole thing. And we decided that the book club it's not only a book club. We love the word book club because it's such an inclusive, generally female driven society. And we love that. And obviously we're obsessed with books, so that helps. But it's so much more than that. It's a network. It's a network of women who rely on one another for things from, we've helped coach people entering the workforce for the first time, negotiated contracts. We've also had glasses of wine with very senior peers and chatted and let them confide in a safe space. And, we'll share things that we found useful and share resources. And like, if on our website, Luce has designed this incredible page, which is like all about our favorite things. We've got affiliate programs and discounts, and we do all sorts of things to try and make it the kind of place that we would want to go if we wanted to learn something. So there's a blog. Lucy and I have both written pieces in the blog. We actively encourage the community to write because everybody's story is so different and everybody's story is so valid and so important. Like, you read different things, and we've got people writing about being a mom and having to go back to work. We've got people writing about, one of my favorite pieces is Louboutins to lullabies, about a girl who, she went from being like a very high flyer to kind of taking a step back and being a mom, and then how she got back into work. And so all of these things are, we've got like a future of work piece that's been written up, and how to negotiate into a higher salary, which has actually worked with someone before. Lucy has written a great piece on imposter syndrome, which I got feedback from like the day after that email was batched out. Someone actually reached out to me and said, this literally couldn't have come through at a better time. I was working on a presentation and I was second guessing myself to hell and gone. And I read this, I looked over the presentation, and then I sent it, and I got great feedback. So, and that's why we do it. That's why we do it, because in those moments where you just need a bit of a nudge or maybe a high five, we want to be that driving force, or we want to provide the community that gives you that driving force.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of our favorite moments was when we had, I think it was only the second, obviously they were all virtual at this point because it was still lockdown, but we had the meetup, and we'd obviously invited people from both of our networks, and everyone had like a bit at the end where they could just chat. And it turned out that someone Mary had worked with in the past, and one of my closest friends that I'd lived with in London, had actually done some work together. One had created the musical piece for an advert that the other one was promoting. So completely different industries, and they hooked up, and then they've worked together since. And there's been a couple of other of the women that have then gone on to work together and help each other. And that's kind of what we wanted to grow, was that you wouldn't, it's not just about what we've got to give. We wanted everyone to start finding their own Mary, their own Lucy to go to. And yeah, like Mary says, we added the fun pages on there where our favorite cocktails, our favorite places to go and relax. These are our favorite shows to watch when you want to unwind. So it's not all, about, we really believe in that balance as well. But Mary wrote a fantastic piece about salary negotiation, and the woman actually went back into the next meeting with them and doubled the offer that they had originally given her. And
fantastic.
Isn't that unreal? And so, Mary called me. I'm like, this is amazing. This is exactly why we're doing this. Like, what a boost for that woman as well, to know that, yes, Mary gave her those tools, but she then went in there and executed that on her own. She went in and said, no. Yeah, it was amazing.
Would you say that is your proudest accomplishment with the Women in Business Book Club? Or is there another specific story that you're like really proud of, a success that's coming out of the Women in Business Book Club?
I think, look, to be completely candid, like the first year, so 2020, it was guns blazing for the first sort of 6 to 8 months. And then Lucy and I took a step back because I was studying a pretty intense course that needed my full attention. Excuse me. And Lucy had just started a new job. So we released our foot on the gas a little bit and just focused on ourselves and getting things tightened up for the end of the year. So now we're kind of coming back together, or 21, sorry, not 20. So now we're kind of coming back together, but I'd say there are a lot of really lovely stories that have come out of different pieces of this network. I think they're all incredibly important, like hearing that someone got a better offer on their new job, or hearing that someone had the courage to send a presentation for the first time to their new boss, or, I don't think we're looking for anything massive, but it's just like, if we can just help like 5 or 10 people in that small way, and then they can help another 5 or 10 people, that's the whole point of this. It's just incremental growth that will eventually aid, whoever wants to go in as deep or as light as they want to within the network.
If somebody wants to get into leadership, is there a book that you would recommend, like top of the list?
So I'm a podcast girl when it comes to this. So I've got like some really good podcasts that I am obsessed with. And this is not just blowing smoke, but you guys have actually been really helpful. So I do like the SaasHoles.
I love
listen to
it.
you guys. Yeah, there's some really good intel that comes out of these shows. And I was saying to KG a while ago, I've listened to one of the shows. I can't remember which one it is now. I think it was how to start an enterprise sales team or how to ramp an enterprise sales team. And I think I listened to it about 3 times and made notes. Like, so there's some really good stuff that comes out. So I love you guys. And then there's The Learning Leader by Ryan Hawk, which is an absolute staple of mine. He's amazing. He touches on loads of different topics within leadership. He covers a very broad range of things, and he has some great guests. He's just written a new book as well, which I've actually ordered, Pursuits of Excellence or something, I think. And also Jim Quick. I love Jim Quick. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but he's called the Brain Doctor. And he basically had a massive head injury when he was a kid and was written off by teachers and doctors and all sorts of things. And as he got older, he found and investigated ways to learn more efficiently. So he teaches people not only how to learn and grow, but how to do that more efficiently than maybe they've traditionally been taught how to do. So those are kind of some of my recommendations. Lou's got some cracking books though.
Yeah, mine are kind of the cult classics, really. I've got a couple that I love. The Challenger Sale, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't really know anyone that hasn't read that. I love that.
Old
and it's
school,
such a
baby.
good one to, yeah, it's just reread it over and over and over. And then The Lasting Impact of Positive Leadership, Stan Toller. And I think most of these books that really run on the premise that you can't succeed, particularly in sales, alone. You have to build relationships with your team, with your clients, with other people in your network. And I think that's what I'd recommend, those books for that kind of vibe, for you to really learn about the fact that you do need other people and you really need to build a relationship. It's like we said at the very beginning, sales isn't just about getting the money in, and there is so much more finesse to it. You have to, that's when the money comes, because you've built and harnessed those. And people buy from people. They don't buy a product just because it's okay, it's going to tick these boxes. If you've got the right person behind that, they're going to buy that you buy from the person. And I just think those are some cult classics to start with if you kind of just want to learn the basics of how you really get your teeth stuck in.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I couldn't agree with you more. Like, just books.
Yeah.
Just read and learn, and podcasts as much. And if you only take like 1 or 2% out of every podcast or book that you read, that actually builds up over time, and you try things and put it into play. Pete, you were going to say, Pete?
I was just going to say, there's people that read all these books, but they apply nothing. So apply.
Yeah. Try.
You're going to spend the time to read it. Apply something.
Yeah, that's exactly. Try put it in play. Yeah, 1%, because most of this stuff is garbage. Like, you'll read it and you're like, oh my God, that doesn't apply or whatever. But you can take 1 or 2% out of every single book that you read and put something into play. So I love that kind of tactical guidance with books and podcasts. But let's get to the heart of the matter. What do you two believe that women who aspire to be in leadership do to get to their goal of being in sales leadership?
That's a great question. I think that, I've learned a huge amount over the years from colleagues, mentors, different firms. But I would say personally for me, the last 2 years have been hypergrowth, like absolute hypergrowth. I was put into a huge role. I had to upskill very quickly. I had to learn very quickly. And there were a lot of things that obviously helped me, but I have maybe three sort of core piece of advice that I would give to someone if they're looking to really ramp up their leadership skills. And I think the first thing is, everyone looks externally when they think about being a leader, but I think the most important thing you can start by doing is looking internally. Figure out who you are. Figure out and understand how you learn. How do you ingest information? How do you understand it? Do you understand it to a level where you can then communicate it back to a team? Like, is it Is it something that you need to work on? Is your communication problematic? You know, how does your team ingest information? Another thing I would say is discipline. Discipline. We all hate it, but discipline leads to execution.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. I think, you know, over the last couple of years where I've been given really massive tasks, truly massive tasks that I haven't really known how to approach. And God bless KG, he's been on the other end of the phone quite a lot for those conversations. But I think you've got to eat the frog, right? Like, no one wants to eat the frog, but you've got to eat the frog. And what I mean by that, for those who are not familiar, is you've got to tackle the really tough projects first. You've got to tackle it. You've got to start it. If you're feeling overwhelmed, just start it. Break it up, but for God's sake, start. If you're not sure how to do the task, source information. This is why your network is so important. You should, by the time you're ready to step into a leadership role, you should have a solid network of mentors who have your back and who are ready to help push you into that role. A mentor and a sponsor, obviously two different things. We won't get into that, but mentors are important because they're not directly related to your success. So they can give you completely unbiased advice. So you should have a really top quality circle of mentors. Failing that, get some and research what you need to off the internet. And then the final thing I would say is, and this is something that I learned at my current company because it's very much our culture there, but this was never taught to me previously, is that curiosity is a superpower. People massively underrate curiosity. I think if you are curious, you need to stoke the flame. You need to surround yourself with people who are like-minded. You need to kick over the rocks. You need to run down the rabbit holes, pull the thread, because when you do discover something and finally put the pieces of the puzzle together on a really challenging really challenging problem, you'll elevate into a new level of productivity. I can guarantee you that. And again, as we kind of just touched on, listen to podcasts, read books, educate yourself. If you're not progressing or if you're struggling with something, like, not to sound like a ball breaker, but that's on you. There are plenty of resources available to empower you to get over that. So yeah, expand your periphery, explore stuff, be curious. So those are kind of three things that have served me really well. Lou, what about you?
Quite similar, but I agree with you from looking inside first. I think emotional intelligence is so much to be said for kind of taking the time to know not just your team, but who you're selling to, who you're working with. I think my dad was one of my business mentors. He worked in the photographic press agency, so very different, but it was kind of an old school when they were like, you know, it was proper printing machines on the papers, and then it all went digital. But there was, he passed a couple of years ago, and there was a beautiful tribute written about him, and the comments as I went through them, which were lovely for us as a family to read, but for me, from a business point of view, they were from clients from 20, 30 years ago. They were from people that he'd taken on at 19 and, you know, helped them on their way through. And all of them mentioned, he asked me about my kids. He asked me about, how was your weekend? He asked me, how's your wife? How's your husband? What's going on with you? How are you? And I think there's so much to be said for when you're leading a team, you're not going to be able to lead each person the same way. Everyone ticks differently. And if you don't know what makes that, what's important to Mary might be, you know, what's not as important to you, KG, and same for you, Pete. Some people are driven by money. Some people are driven by making sure they've got enough family time. You have to find out what makes everyone tick. And you have to take the time with your clients to, when you pick up that phone to do a deal or, you know, book the next meeting or whatever, take 5 minutes just to chat about them. How are you? You know, what's going on with you, and build that relationship. So I think that's super important. And I think the pandemic really highlighted this because it's so much less personal now. You're not having that face-to-face time. We really need to take the time to speak to people and, you know, have that chat. So I think that's massively important. We've covered reading. I just think, honestly, shove your head in a pile of books, just find out as much as you can. It's like Mary says, you've got the information out there. There's no excuse. And I think breaking it up, I think your podcast, guys, is great because I actually, the first time we started speaking about being on the podcast, I was driving down to a friend's house, which is about 3.5 hours away. And so I put you guys on in the car, and I laughed for that entire 3 hours. But it's like you're saying, I was taking a couple of bits here and there because I'm driving and you're not fully, listening, but I was laughing, I was learning, and it broke up. You don't feel like you're sitting there during a course where you've got to take notes and you've got to retain everything. It was just a great way of, bringing in new knowledge, finding out about people, and laughing and relaxing at the same time. I think you've got to make sure that you're breaking it up.
Don't encourage the dad jokes, Lucy. There are so many.
I did not set her up for that, Pete.
Honestly, you're sitting there like, yeah.
You both addressed self-concept earlier in the show. That can be put towards the imposter syndrome. What is the imposter syndrome?
So the imposter syndrome is basically kind of feeling like you're not good enough. It's kind of self-doubt, true self-doubt, where you think, I absolutely can't do this. I'm a fraud. I'm going to get caught out. Usually when you start a new role or you join a new industry, you're kind of looking at everyone else and not taking in that they might have however many years ahead of you, or they might, they also might be winging it. But the imposter syndrome is really about self-doubt and just not really thinking about that you're able to do something. And I don't think that's, I think it's regardless of gender. I think sometimes maybe women talk about feeling like that more. They're more honest about it, just because that's just, historically how we are. But I think it's for all genders, and, everyone will have felt it at some point in their life, whether they want to admit it or not. And I just think this is kind of when one-on-ones with your team, or like taking that time to have a conversation and let someone know why they're valued. You're here, you've got a seat at the table for this reason. This is what you're great at. We can look at what you need to work on and how we can boost other areas, but this is why you're here. This is the value you hold. And I think doing that to yourself as well is super important, because it's so easy to only hear the negatives that you say. Mary actually taught me a trick, which some people might think is quite cheesy, but I'm quite into it now. Like writing on your windows and your mirrors, like just little things that are like, yeah, you've got this fucking shit. You've got it. Like, you can do this. And I think, it's all about that. It's just reminding yourself that, listen, that you're not going to be hired into a role if someone thinks you're not going to do it, because no good leader is going to hire someone that they think, hang on a minute, they're not quite, you're there for a reason. And I think, imposter syndrome is just self-doubt that we need to work through.
What's that quote that we love so much, Lou?
So from the former president of Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
You can't leave a lasting footprint if you're always walking on your tiptoes.
Top quote.
It's so good. Yeah, Marion Blakely. And I think it's so good because it's so true. And if you look back, and we can all say this, that the people that, I remember the people that have asked questions and gone out there and made mistakes. And, those are the people I remember that have, gone further. And I just think, we really need to try and harness that energy, because it's too easy to fall back.
Yeah, that's one of the things about being sales leadership and dealing with salespeople is they'll only work to the level, to the degree that they'll make money that they think that they're worth. And you have to show that they're worth more, or they're not going to work harder for it. So great job. A big fan.
Did you ever suffer from the imposter syndrome, by the way, Pete?
Oh, I've always been an imposter. Sales leader, podcast host, podcast editor, production.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it.
Fake it till you make it. There's the opposite, is the Dunning-Kruger effect, if anybody is familiar with that. And
I am not.
I'm no scientist. Go look it up. But there's great videos on this. Basically, people that are underperformers or unintelligent individuals believe they're smarter or better performing than they actually are. So it's somewhat. I'm not a professional. I'm totally just winging it here. But it's almost the opposite of the imposter syndrome, where high performers always think, God, somebody's going to find out that I'm actually not that good. And I agree with you, Lucy. It's everybody can suffer from that imposter syndrome. But you have to just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward for sure. So I loved the story that you talked about earlier, both of you, where you provided a blog post on how to negotiate for a higher salary, and somebody in the Women in Business Book Club took that to heart and affected their lives. That's fantastic. What do you recommend for women specifically? So what was in that blog post? What should women do if they want to get raises and ask for higher comp?
Again, like kind of touching on the fact that I think a lot of women, especially the women I've come across, they battle to ask for what they want, and self-worth is definitely an issue that everyone in leadership should be fighting with their team, regardless of gender. We fight that constantly in the book club as well. But I think women are sort of intrinsically designed as people pleasers, right? Which of course hinders that direct approach, that sort of assertive nature. And we just have to evolve past this mentality. Like, we need to evolve. We need to get over that and start being more vocal about what we need and what we believe we're worth. That's not to say, however, that you should walk into your boss's office and say, I deserve a 10% raise. Like, you need to have some sense behind it, right? Like, there needs to be a business case. You need to show why you deserve more, what value you're bringing that's incremental to what you're being paid to do. So I think there's definitely a fine line between how you approach it and how you execute on it. But definitely read the blog post if you have a chance, because there are different tactics regarding if you're an existing employee or if you're new going into a company. But I would say definitely do your homework, do market research. If you're looking at the moment to move jobs, like, it is a great time for you. People are throwing money around. So make sure that you have some fact behind what you're asking for. Have a business case. Be prepared to answer why you add value to that company, or why you think that you deserve more when you've made an initial offer. But just ask what you want, right? Like,
don't ask, don't get.
Yeah, exactly. I've been on both sides as an employee and a manager, having those conversations. But read the blog. I think it's pretty informative, but I wrote it, so I'll be biased. But
the title of the blog post again specifically?
Yeah, how to ask for
how to negotiate your way into a higher salary. That's what it's called.
How to negotiate your way into higher salary. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I honestly, I just want to say your male counterparts don't even think that way though. And that it freaking sucks. I've had many of the male counterparts though come into a meeting with their hand out and say, can I be a manager? Just with their hand out. And they're not going to put a business case together. They're not going to do all those things. And I feel so torn about this. Your blog post is fantastic. Yet the male counterparts don't have to put forth as many efforts yet, for this, and that it sucks, but you're absolutely right. You be prepared. And Lucy, amen. Pete was jumping out of his chair. You don't ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yep.
Number one rule in sales. Yep. Mary and Lucy, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having us. It's been awesome.
What's the best way for listeners to learn more about you guys or connect?
So head off to the website, www.womeninbusinessbookclub.com, and everything is on there. Mary's blog, the other blogs, links to everything else, to join the network. You'll just find everything on there. We've got a Facebook page, Instagram as well.
LinkedIn.
Mary loves LinkedIn. Yeah, she loves it. But yeah, so to head to the website, links to all the social channels and everything's on there, and all the other fun stuff that we love as well is there. So we'd love to welcome anyone, and it isn't just women. Anyone that wants to get involved.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, message us, Pete. We'll show you how to get a higher salary.
And then, but also, we were saying we'd love some blogs from guys that have helped women and are advocates for women. So just to have it from the other point of view. So yeah, it's for everyone.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, we'll have all the links in the podcast notes. Ladies, fantastic show. Thanks for listening to SaasHoles. On behalf of Jamie, KG, and myself, Pete, we thank you for listening. And we ask that you give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to our weekly newsletter in the podcast notes. And you can always buy us a beer on Patreon/SaasHoles. We thank you for listening. Cue the music.